And the title of my presentation is A Comparative Study on the Use of Pronoun Interpretation in Turkish versus English as Second Language. The structure of my presentation will be as follows. I'll start my talk with an introduction, continue with my research questions and hypotheses. Then I'll give information on the background literature that the study is based on. Later on, I will move on to the methodology of the study. Then I will illustrate the results of my analyses, and finally I will end my talk with the conclusions. So, to start with, I would like to introduce my topic in detail. This study is a study on the interpretation and the use of pronouns. Now, this then takes us to the question of what is a pronoun. A pronoun is defined as part of speech that is typically used as substitute for a noun or a noun phrase. I am particularly interested in the personal pronoun choices of native speakers of Turkish, both in their second language English and in Turkish. This then takes us to the distinction between personal pronouns in English versus personal pronouns in Turkish. In English, each of the personal pronouns show us the grammatical person, gender, number, and the case of the noun that they replace. Here in the first example, we see the sentence, "You are not going." The second person singular pronoun you here replaces the name of an hypothetical person, Mary. And since the pronoun here is used overtly in the sentence, we call this pronoun an overt pronoun. Different from English, personal pronouns in Turkish do not show gender. Additionally, Turkish is known as a prodrop language, meaning that the deletion of an overt pronoun in Turkish is possible. And after this deletion, we would have a null pronoun use in the sentence. As can be seen from the second example here, the sentence "gitmiyorsun" does not include any overt pronoun use. Instead, it has a null pronoun, which, the same as the first example, is the second person singular pronoun, you. And again, it refers to the noun, Mary. However, it is not always easy to interpret a pronoun. In the third example here, Mary is not going with Susan, she is late. The pronoun she can be interpreted as either Mary or Susan. So this ambiguity that pronouns can cause has been a topic of many research studies in this area. In fact, there are many studies in literature on the pronoun choices of native speakers of English. Starting from this very point, I was interested in the pronoun choices of native speakers of Turkish, both in their Turkish and second language English. And with the help of this investigation, I was also interested to see whether there were any influences of the first language on the second. Therefore, I have designed an experiment in order to be able to clarify these matters. But before coming to my experiment, I would like to take you to my research questions behind the experiment. The first one is, do native speakers of Turkish interpret pronouns in second language English as native speakers of English? And the second one is, does pronoun use in the first language affect the pronoun use in the second? My research questions led me to my hypotheses. The first hypothesis that I have states that in second language English, native speakers of Turkish show the same pattern of pronoun interpretation as native speakers of English. And the second hypothesis that I have states that they show a different pattern of pronoun interpretation and pronoun use in Turkish, given that Turkish is a prodrop language. As I've concisely mentioned earlier, there are many studies in literature on the pronoun choices that native speakers of English make. Current study takes two of the previous studies as reference. The first study that I would like to talk about is carried out by Stevenson et al. In 1994. In their study, researchers investigated the possible influence of thematic roles with the help of sentence completion tasks that included pronoun prompt or no pronoun prompt. The result of this study yielded a strong subject-biased interpretation for the pronoun prompt condition. This means that in example 10a, the interpretation of the pronoun he would be John, the subject of the sentence. And they observed a strong object bias for the no pronoun prompt condition. This means that in example 10b, when used, a pronoun would be interpreted as Bill, the object of the sentence. The second study that I would like to mention is carried out by Keller and Rode in 2013. This study included the effects of implicit causality verbs in relation with pronoun choices. The results of this study revealed that some verbs, such as amaze, are subject bias verbs, whereas some verbs, such as detest, are object bias verbs. Thus, in example 15a, we would expect the interpretation of the pronoun she to be Amanda, the subject of the sentence. And in 15b, we would expect it to be interpreted as Brittany, the object of the sentence. Let us now move on to the methodology of the current study. I have designed 2 surveys that included 10 sentence completion tasks. My surveys were only different in that one was in Turkish and the other one was in English. I have informed my participants that the study was on narration in both of the languages so that their pronoun choices were not affected. I have distributed both surveys to 10 native speakers of Turkish, whose second language is English. They were instructed to fill out the Turkish survey first. In my study, I have combined the 2 conditions from the literature that I've previously mentioned. Thus, each survey was composed of 5 tasks with pronoun prompt and subject bias verb, and 5 tasks with no pronoun prompt and object bias verb. Sentence completion tasks here are taken directly from my surveys. Example 1 contains pronoun prompt, which is he in the English version and o in the Turkish version, and a subject bias verb, which is the verb to impress in the English version and etkilemek in the Turkish version. In both of my surveys, I have additionally asked my participants to state which noun they have referred to when a pronoun was used. So they provided that information in parentheses, such as in the example interpretations here. Example 2 contains no pronoun prompt and object bias verbs. That would be the verb to blame in the English version and suçlamak in the Turkish version. And again, they would state their pronoun interpretation in the parentheses in the case that they have used pronouns for the no pronoun prompt condition. So what follows after the analysis of the surveys is that I have compared my findings both within Turkish and second language English, and I compared them to native speakers of English. So here in the first figure we have, it shows the distribution of subject and object interpretation for Turkish and second language English for pronoun prompt and subject bias verb tasks. As can be seen here, for the Turkish survey, 74% of the pronouns given were interpreted as the subject of the previous sentence. And we have a similar result in second language English with the percentage of 78 for the subject bias. Thus, for this condition, we can say that native speakers of Turkish tend to show a similar pattern of pronoun interpretation as native speakers of English. Next up is the results of no pronoun prompt and object bias verb tasks. Figure 2 shows the distribution of object and subject interpretation of overt pronouns for Turkish and second language English. In no pronoun prompt, since I have also retrieved non-pronoun uses, it is important to note here that this graph does not include any responses that are not overt pronouns. So for the Turkish survey, my participants have interpreted all of the pronouns that they have used as the object of the previous sentence. Thus, here we have a 100% object biased interpretation. And for the English survey, they have interpreted 95% of the pronouns as the object of the previous sentence and 5% as the subject of the previous sentence. Therefore, for the no pronoun prompt, when a pronoun is used, we observe an object bias in both Turkish and second language English, same as native speakers of English. The last figure that I have displays the overall pronoun use versus non-pronoun use in the two languages for the no pronoun prompt sentences. Looking at this figure, we have a clearer picture of how many of the no pronoun prompt tasks included the use of pronouns. So for Turkish, my participants have used 14 pronouns and 36 non-pronouns, whereas in second language English, they have used 44 pronouns and 6 non-pronouns. We can see here that native speakers of Turkish used less pronouns in Turkish than they did in their second language English. And as the last point here, I would like to state that non-pronoun uses in these surveys are composed of null pronouns and names for the Turkish survey, and only of names for the English survey. As the last step of my analysis, I have applied a statistical test called chi-square test to see whether there's a statistically significant difference between the language in use and pronoun use. Table 1 here displays the distribution of the categories to be tested, same as the last figure. After the application of the test, I have seen that the result was in fact significant at p-value less than 0.01. Yeah, meaning that this result is not random or by chance. Now, I would like to conclude my presentation in two parts. The findings indicate that for the pronoun prompt of second language English, native speakers of Turkish show a similar pattern of pronoun interpretation as native speakers of English. So that would be a subject bias interpretation. And for the no pronoun prompt, they show a strong bias towards the object of the sentence. Therefore, there is a similar pattern as native English speakers in this case as well. Then, coming back to my first hypothesis, which states that in second language English, native speakers of Turkish show the same pattern of pronoun interpretation as native speakers of English, is confirmed. Moving on to the pronoun choices that they have made in Turkish. For the pronoun prompt, native speakers of Turkish show a similar pattern of pronoun interpretation with a subject bias as native speakers of English. And for the no pronoun prompt, it can be said that they use less pronouns than they do in their second language English. Moreover, all of the pronouns that they do use display an object bias interpretation, as the native speakers of English do. Coming back to my second hypothesis here, which states that they show a different pattern of pronoun interpretation and pronoun use in Turkish, is only partially confirmed. It is confirmed that whether they use a pronoun differs for Turkish and second language English, given that Turkish is a pro-drop language. It is not confirmed in that their pronoun interpretation still shows a similar pattern as native speakers of English when they do use pronouns. And finally, I would like to say that looking at the overall results, there is no visible effect of the first language on the second. And these are my references. Thank you very much for your attention.